Good morning and welcome to Taub Live. It is Friday, thank God. And we have some fabulous breaking news. I love it. I live for those moments when President Scribbleface, it could be President Scribbletace, when President Flippin' Scribbleface takes the L. And yes, my friends, he lost big time. You know it. Donald Trump was slapped back by a federal judge who was appointed by a Republican president. His prized order, his order to basically restrict, if not ban, birthright citizenship, something guaranteed by the U.S. Constitution, my friends, that was put in the freezer. The states that went in, remember I told you 22 states have sued, but this was a lawsuit by 3 states. And they brought it in federal court in Washington. And the federal judge in court was so disgusted by Donald Trump's lawyers, the lawyers for him in his seat as president. He was so disgusted with the president's attorneys that in court, he said not only that it was blatantly unconstitutional, guys, but he admonished his attorneys. And he actually said that, and I'm going to quote the judge. He said to the lawyers, Donald Trump's lawyers, President Scribbleface's lawyers, he said, I am having trouble. Actually, let me show you the judge himself. I think we should just put him up here. Okay, there is the judge speaking. And one thing he said is, I can't remember another case where the question presented is as clear as it is here. In other words, this order is totally unconstitutional, right? And he said, and this is a slap in the face, an embarrassment to the lawyers who brought this case. I am having trouble understanding how a member of the bar could state unequivocally that this order is constitutional. This is what he said to the judge from the U.S. This is what the judge told the lawyer from the U.S. Department of Justice representing President Scribbleface for this order to ban birthright citizenship. The judge said, I am having trouble understanding how a member of the bar could state unequivocally that this order is constitutional. And he added, it just boggles the mind. It just boggles the mind. Yes, it does. Okay, so let's talk a bit about that, right? Because now you have heard the headlines, right? This is what the judge said in court. But wouldn't you like to know why it is the case that this boggles the mind? I think you should know this. This is where we're going to get a little wonky. Okay, so let's take a look first at, what we want to understand here, which is, I know you might have your own pocket constitution, but, if you don't actually have a pocket constitution, we can just lay this out, right? We can just lay this out for you. And it makes clear, without question, what Donald Trump is trying to take away. And that is, of course, the birthright citizenship that was made clear in the 14th Amendment, which was one of the Reconstruction Amendments designed to make sure that the rights of people who were freed from slavery were not abridged, right? This is one of the most powerful amendments in the Constitution. There are 5 sections to it, and they have all provided so many rights for all of us. And It is shocking to me that he would deem to be able to take this away. Now, it's not just the plain language of the US Constitution, which we will talk about, but let's look at it in the context, guys, of this decision. And I am going to share my screen with you because I think you want to know this. Okay, so I am going to share with you this case. And let me see if it's in the right space. Okay, great. This is a wonderful page if you ever want to understand a Supreme Court decision. It's called Oyez, and it is at oyez.org. And it will come up on Google, but it will also come up for you simply by going, you can go to the website and then you can look into a specific decision. And the case I am showing you here, as you can see, is called United States versus Wong Kim Ark. And yes, my friends, this dates back to 1897. Are you with me? Did you want to go to law school today? Welcome to a free law school lesson. Okay, here we go. So this is a way to read a decision without having to go into depth. Now, you could, if you see on the side here, look at a syllabus which would summarize the case, and you can also view the decision if you wanted to. But I'm doing this overview because this is what we need right now. So what this dates back to is an immigration statute called the Chinese Exclusion Act. And this was a law that forbid any Chinese immigrants any path to citizenship in the United States. There was a treaty with China at the time saying that no one who could even become a naturalized citizen. So basically you had in the US saying, yeah, if you are a Chinese immigrant, there is no path to citizenship. And in China, they did not want people to become from China if they were subjects of the emperor at the time. They did not want those subjects to become US citizens. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, Wong Kim Ark had two parents. These parents were Chinese citizens, and they lived in the United States at the time he was born. When they decided to leave, and basically, they had lived, by the way, in the United States for 2 decades. They moved back to China, and when he was 21, he went to visit his parents in China, and when he tried to return, he was denied re-entry. Now, this wasn't the first time that he visited them, but when he tried it when he was younger, and then he apparently at 21, when he went there, he tried to come back. I'm sorry, let me say it differently. I think that I don't know how long he was there, but when he was 21, he tried to return. So I'm not sure if he was younger than 21. He might have been 20 or 19, but he went over to China to see his parents again. And when he tried to come back into the United States to cross the border, he was denied re-entry because they said Wong was not a citizen. And so the U.S. Supreme Court looked at this question and they said, is a child who was born in the United States to Chinese citizen parents who were lawful permanent residents in the United States, was he a U.S. citizen under the Citizenship Clause of the 14th Amendment? And the court concluded that because he was born in the United States and because his parents were not, and I'm putting in quotes, employed in a diplomatic or official capacity under the Emperor of China, therefore, the 14th Amendment automatically made him a U.S. citizen. Now, let me be clear. What is this part about being a diplomat or working for the government of a foreign country? In the 14th Amendment, it grants birthright citizenship. It says if you are born in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction hereof, you are automatically a citizen, period. The exception to that, of course, is if you are a family of diplomats and you come here, you're not allowed to. The idea is to protect the country from people who work for a foreign government who come here deliberately to have children and somehow get citizenship, and then the children would be their puppets of the government. That's the thinking here. Okay, so this opinion was written, guys, in the same era of Plessy versus Ferguson. This is a decision that was written in the same era where this racist court was believing separate but equal worked. Okay, so I want you to understand how powerful this decision was. This was not a magnanimous court looking at every turn to open the country up to people that we were racist against. I mean, remember, think about this. There was a law in place, the Chinese Exclusion Act here. And even with that, the U.S. Supreme Court was very clear about what the 14th Amendment says. Now, I want to show you the text of the 14th Amendment citizenship language, okay? So that you can actually see it. Okay, here we go. It's section 1, and I'm going to pull this up for you so that you can also see this, because this is your document. And I want to be absolutely clear with you. This is, my friends, the higher power that we all answer to, including Donald flippin' Trump. I'm going to blow this up. So, oops, am I going in the wrong direction? Okay, I think you should be able to see this. This is section 1 of the 14th Amendment. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and the state wherein they reside. Okay? That is that. Now, I am going to stop sharing that for a moment. Let us now consider, if you are still with me, we are going to get out of the wonk, but I think this is really important, what a loser Donald Trump is, because we actually have the court's decision. I promised you, we will not read the entire decision from this federal judge, but I want you to see it because I am trying to demystify the law for you. You don't just need to always look at what the press says. You know, you can actually use your own eyes and read these orders. And this is a short one. So let's share this, guys. Okay, this is super fun for me. I can't tell you. I think you can see this. And I'm sorry that we have the pagination on the left. I think I can get rid of that. Yes, I did. Okay, let's pump this up. Yes, we can see it. Now, this was, as you can see, filed yesterday. And this is the Honorable John, I think it's Coffenor. I have not heard his name pronounced. I'm avoiding television news for the most part. So this is the case I mentioned. It's the state of Washington and a couple other states versus Donald Trump and other defendants here. And it says here, this is a temporary restraining order. Now, you may have heard about temporary restraining orders in the context of domestic violence, but they're not only for that. A temporary restraining order is when you bring a lawsuit to try to get an injunction, to stop someone from doing something. In this case, it is to enforce, which they were planning to do, Donald Trump's order. And I should be clear, the order, the part of the order that's most important, wouldn't go into effect until 30 days. And this part of the order would say that any child born in the United States, as soon as the order is in effect, does not have birthright citizenship. In other words, if you are born in the United States under Donald Trump's order, after it goes into effect, unless one of your parents is a U.S. citizen at the time of your birth, you would no longer be a citizen. That is the order that would be put into place in 30 days. Okay, so what is a restraining order? A restraining order is when the state of Washington and the others sued. They're trying to say to the judge, and the judge, I understand that you're not allowed to put a permanent, you can't make a permanent decision to block Donald Trump's executive order. And you can't even do what's called a preliminary order because you haven't heard any of the facts of this case. So you're rushing in to preserve the status quo. It's called a temporary restraining order. There's certain standards, and they're very high, that a judge must meet to impose a temporary restraining order. Now, in the context of domestic violence, where you've heard of it, a temporary restraining order is where you come in before you go into court and explain why this partner is being violent or dangerous, you go in and you ask for a TRO to immediately impose a perimeter around which this person cannot come, and so on. Okay, so you get the idea of what a TRO is. Now, in this case, and this is not very long, this is 4 pages, the court sets out what Washington, Arizona, Illinois, and Oregon, these are 4 states that filed here. So it's an emergency motion for a temporary restraining order, right? And this is the order that Donald Trump signed. President Scribble signed this order on January 20th, right when he took office. And the name of the order that we've been talking about is called Protecting the Meaning and Value of American Citizenship. And what the state of Washington at all asked for was just a 14-day TRO. And the court granted it, okay? And he granted it yesterday at 11 a.m. Now, this order also, friends, sets out a section of finding of facts, right? And then it does conclusions of law. And I think it's worth noting here, and you know what I'm doing? I feel like I should drop this into the chat because some of you guys are legal nerds. A lot of you are. Okay, so the idea here is that well, let me actually back up and say this, because the conclusions of law will align this. So first of all, the court has to say that it has jurisdiction over the case, which it does. I will explain that some other day. The other thing you have to show is that they have standing to bring the lawsuit. And under precedent, you have to have standing. The plaintiffs here, meaning Washington State and the other states, have to make a sufficient showing of concrete and imminent economic injury. And I know we're talking about liberty, right? We're talking about liberty interests, but we're not having people in the United States sue, right? These are the states themselves. So what is the economic interest? Well, the economic interest is that if the law suddenly changes, all the children born in Washington State and those other 3 states would now no longer be subject to get the funding that the federal government would provide to the states. And now that would mean like the state of Washington would be responsible for things for those children, whether it be Medicaid or later when they are grown adults and elderly, maybe Medicare, all these different things that they would be entitled to. In addition, with other federal funds, all of this would have to be provided by the state, and the state would have those direct costs plus the cost of chaos in building up its state infrastructure. Okay, so that was enough to show concrete and imminent economic injury. But to get a temporary restraining order, and I'm almost at the end of this, you guys, this is the thing. You can't just stop a U.S. president from enforcing an executive order without any kind of hearing where, all the facts and so on, arguments are laid out. So in order to get this, Washington State would have to show that they were likely to succeed on the merits, that if the judge doesn't halt this order, they would suffer irreparable harm. The third thing is, on balance, because there's 2 sides to everything, it's more fair to rule in favor of the state here. And then finally, you have to show the 4th prong of a temporary restraining order would be that this injunction, this stopping of the order would be in the public interest. And so what's the most interesting part of this 4-page decision begins on page 3, where the court says why Washington State and others would succeed on the merits. And they cite, my friends, do you see this? U.S. versus Wong Kim Ark, the 1898 case. And then they also refer to subsequent cases in 1943, as well as one in 1892. Okay, so the case I mentioned is the bedrock foundation of this. We're talking about going back to long established precedent. Okay, so first, likelihood to succeed on the merits. Of course, the irreparable harm is tied to the economic harm we talked about, the costs and the administrative duties. And of course, in terms of this sort of loosey-goosey, touchy-feely question about does the balance of fairness, equity tipped to the states, the court just said yes, and said yes, that the public interest weighs in favor of the relief. Doesn't explain why. Okay, so what is the restraining order? It's essentially what the court, what they asked for, and it would stay in place until they hear otherwise. So obviously we're going to have a hearing and so on. So I just want to show you. The most important thing about what I showed you is there was no language calling the lawyers idiots in the order. So if you went to the official order and you were looking for that language where the judge says it boggles the mind that you're making these arguments, you don't find it in the written document, right? You find that in the court record and in the news reporting from journalists. Okay, so Donald Trump, thanks to this judge, who says, I cannot remember another case where the question presented is as clear as here, he lost big time. Now, what does it mean? Where do we go from here? Well, I'm sure you realize that there's no chance in hell that the judge is going to rule in Donald Trump's favor. What will follow is the judge will put in a preliminary restraining order, if not, hear the whole thing and be able to impose a permanent injunction that this cannot be enforced, and hopefully nationwide, as is the case here. Okay, then what happens? Okay, well, if you want to know, Donald Trump will appeal it, right? And he will appeal it right up to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. And the Ninth Circuit, which covers like California, Washington State, is known to be a more liberal circuit court. I imagine that from there, whether the Ninth Circuit, the Ninth Circuit is going to, whatever, they'll start with 3 panels, 3 judges. The Ninth Circuit is going to say, yeah, this is unconstitutional. And then, of course, ultimately, it's going to be the Department of Justice on behalf of Scribble are going to ask the United States Supreme Court to hear this. He's going to lose at the United States Supreme Court, but unfortunately, I don't think it will be unanimous. So the question is, will they take the case or just simply affirm? Now, you may say to yourself, Jennifer, you and this judge keep arguing that this is unconstitutional. What is the theory? Don't you want to know why they're even suggesting that this is even an argument, right? So I think it's worth sharing with you the concept of what they are trying to argue. And it's something my kid figured out at dinner, my precocious 18-year-old who likes to read Bloomberg Law to us at dinner. But there is a theory here. And let me just, I'm going to remove this for a second. But the theory here, I think that they're going with, and they've got lots of different theories, but the bedrock theory they have here is that language about being subject to the jurisdiction hereof. Okay, so they're arguing that if you are born here, and under their theory, that makes you undocumented and not a citizen, that you're not actually subject to the laws here, and that your parents aren't either. And that makes absolutely no sense because, as we know, if you are an undocumented person living here, you still have to pay taxes, right? You're still subject to the laws here. It's kind of absolute nonsense. And there are people, I want to warn you, and I'm going to blow this up. I don't know if you can kind of see this, but there are people, and this is something on Blue Sky, trying to defend this. And this is going to be hard for you to read, so let me start at the bottom. This starts with a quote from Judge Koppner, who said, I've been on the bench for 4 decades. I can't remember another case where the question presented was as clear as this to me. And then he said, this is a blatantly unconstitutional order. Where were the lawyers when this decision was being made? Okay. And then there's a separate lawsuit. So this was with 4 states. The separate lawsuit is filed by 18 other states and 2 cities. And that one is being considered in federal court in Massachusetts. Okay. So we've got the one we're looking at now. This complete suck-up idiot, I don't know who he is, Elon Warman. I shouldn't call him a suck-up idiot. I'm sorry. Disingenuous bullshitter. He said, maybe the birthright citizenship order will ultimately be held unconstitutional, but I find it highly embarrassing for a judge to say something so unequivocally at a preliminary stage without the slightest acknowledgement that there is an entire literature that disagrees. Okay, this is a law professor speaking. Well, another law professor, one who actually has credibility, Anthony Michael Kreis, constitutional law professor at Georgia State, said, something is embarrassing, but the call is coming from inside the house. I'm sorry, but it's bad. Sometimes it's okay to say no in defense of the constitutional order and our most valued traditions. We do not need to entertain all ideas as having equal merit or pretend or going through the motions. So when someone says there's literature, there are no cases. There are people just saying racist shit. You know, there's literature out there saying that Jewish people drink the blood of Christian children. I think Henry Ford circulated it. Doesn't make it worthwhile to mention, is what Anthony is saying. And then Jamil Bowie, who I love, columnist, said, there is an entire literature that disagrees. And then he put a little footnote, the dog shit work of my hack friends. I think that's pretty funny. A little bit more on that literature. I think there was one of my favorite law professors, Scott Shapiro, said that literature is in Canada. You just haven't met her. You know that joke about my girlfriends in Canada? Anyway, what I'm trying to say to you is there is no credible argument to support Donald Trump's order, his executive order, trying to redefine birthright citizenship and take it away. There is nothing. And what everyone's trying to say here is shame on these lawyers. You know, they can go ahead and make these arguments, but you know what they could also do? They could also resign. Okay, so thank you. So this is why Donald Trump is an utter loser. Now, there are other things that he lost on, and that is, and if you watched Rachel Maddow last night, which I admit I watched part of, which is very good, she mentioned, and I think you know this, there have been hiring freezes all over the federal government, including in the Department of Veteran Affairs. And hiring freezes in terms of jobs posted, in terms of new jobs filled, and in fact, people who had been given job offers, who had already moved to the cities where they would be working, had their jobs rescinded. And there was such a hue and cry, including from Republicans, that apparently Donald Trump decided to reverse that. And what I saw is that it might have affected upwards of 300,000 people, which is wonderful. So that is another loss for him. Now, speaking of immigration, there was something very disturbing that we are going to see more of, and it's going to be hard to stop. And I want to draw your attention to that. And that is, and this comes from here. Let me see if I can make this as big as I can. As you may have heard, there were warrantless raids in Newark, New Jersey. And the problem is these were raids on including U.S. citizens. And so I'm going to read to you, this is from yesterday, this is from Mayor Baraka. This is his statement on ICE, their raid. This is the federal government's raid on Newark's business establishment, right? Today, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE agents, raided a local establishment in the city of Newark, detaining undocumented residents as well as citizens without providing a warrant. One of the detainees is a U.S. military veteran who suffered the indignity of having the legitimacy of his military documentation questioned. This egregious act is in plain violation of the Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution, which guarantees, quote, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures. Newark will not stand by idly while people are being unlawfully terrorized. I will be holding a press conference in alliance with partners ready and willing to defend and protect civil and human rights. Details to come. I think this affected 30-ish people. And the reason why I'm concerned about this is I was listening to Chris Hayes last night, and a head lawyer for the ACLU was on. And, you know, he he didn't BS us, right? And he said, I'm just trying to see the name of this lawyer who was on. Um, yeah, I think I've got this lawyer's name. Anyway, it doesn't I can't remember his name right now, but what he pointed out is some of this stuff is low hanging fruit, right? It's really easy to block. You know, we're very confident that this trying to redefine and take away take away birthright citizenship. That's not going to work, right? That's pretty straightforward. But the concern about having these raids, about, we can say that we want them to stop, but these efforts to deport people are going to be an issue. Now, one thing we might be able to stop, as he pointed out, is some of the fast track deportations they're trying, because you actually need congressional action to so-called fast track them. But we are going to see more of these raids. And yes, Kissy Cat said this is brown profiling. You know, why did ICE choose that business? Why did ICE not believe the U.S. citizen who was a military veteran? Is it because of the color of his skin? Is it because of the accent he had? This is ugly and this is happening. Okay, now, on a more positive note, we had, let me just say this here. There are people shocked, but of course he's doing this. Lovely guy that I've known for years from Facebook, Darius Smith, who's now over on Blue Sky. For those who are in horror over what the orange rat bastard does these next 4 years, see here. And then there's this great photo of Kamala Harris. Below it, the caption, he literally said he would do that. Now, of course, we're upset. And yes, I want to fight back. But spare me, you didn't expect this to happen. Not you guys, but the rest of the people who said that's not what they wanted. For example, I don't know if you heard, but the police union, the largest police union, I think it's the Fraternal Order of Police, that might be the name of it, they're now upset that Donald Trump offered a blanket pardon, and in some cases commutation, to everybody involved in the attack on the Capitol. But he said he was going to do that. He never said he was going to exclude those who acted violently and harmed or caused the death of police officers. So wake up. Will you pull your endorsement? That's what we really want to know. And let me add this. This is so important to me. I don't know David Winter, but he put this up on Blue Sky and he said, I kept this screenshot assuming someday we might be asked to forget. My friends, that someday has come today. This was the headline, January 7th of the New York Times, the late edition. This says, Trump incites mob, rampage in Capitol, forces evacuations. It's part of his legacy, a Republican says. Take that in for a moment. Right? Take that in for a moment. They are literally trying to erase that from his legacy right now. They are literally trying to deny that those folks were violent. Now, of course, the police officers are upset, but they'll get over that. Everyone will act as if this never happened. Now, got a couple more things before we get to our whiteboard. Now, they've already started up in the House new hearings about January 6th because they want to whitewash history. And the trouble is they're having a hard time figuring out who the witnesses will be. And apparently someone close to Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, like a staffer of his, is trying to make sure that this new committee does not subpoena Cassidy Hutchinson. And here's why. And this had not come out before, but this is really gross. Okay, so we love Cassidy Hutchinson. She was in her 20s when she took the job at the White House. And when she had the courage to testify before the January 6th committee. And here's an excerpt from the Washington Post from yesterday. An aide to House Speaker Mike Johnson advised Republican colleagues against subpoenaing former White House aide Cassidy Hutchinson as part of their investigation into the January 6, 2021 attack. Why, guys? Why? To prevent the release of sexually explicit texts that lawmakers sent her, according to written correspondence received by the Post and a person familiar with the effort. The aide intervened last June, citing concerns that a subpoena could expose the texts, according to the correspondence and the person who requested anonymity to speak candidly about private conversations. Johnson revived the investigation this week as part of an effort by President Scribble and his allies to seek retribution against perceived political enemies, including those who investigated the attack on the Capitol. So that was not something I had on my bingo card for this year. And I'm sorry that happened to Cassidy Hutchinson. We had already heard from some of her testimony that she was uncomfortable with someone, but I don't think it was a member of Congress, if I recall correctly. Now, it's also been a difficult time for Scribbleface because Elon Musk is not manageable or controllable. And it's not just because he apparently contributed over $250,000 to so-called independent spending to help Donald Trump get elected. I think it's also because he doesn't, he is the richest man on the planet and feels like he is untouchable. And so Donald Trump is engaging in these efforts to build up some crazy AI plan. And Elon Musk is on, I guess on Twitter or True Social, wherever he is posting, undermining that effort. And let me tell you what King Elon is up to. And this is a quote from Lee Greenberg, who is one of the co-founders of Indivisible. He said, "This is an absolutely jaw-dropping sentence. The problem is the president doesn't have any leverage over him, and Elon gives zero fucks." So this is the subheadline here from Politico. Trump's staff furious after Musk trashes AI project. And then someone said, "It's clear he has abused the proximity to the president." Oh, well, you get what you pay for or what you didn't pay for. Now, I got something else to share with you on the Elon Musk front. And remember the other day, I was extremely upset with the ADL for not calling a Nazi salute a Nazi salute. And they asked us to have, to be charitable, to show each other grace. And yet, Elon Musk, whether he claims he was trolling or not, he was deliberately sending signals twice, doing the Sig Heil to an audience, showing his alliance with the far right. And remember, he does also support the far right, extremely far right Nazi party in AfD in Germany. Okay, so something new on that. Let's start with the bottom. At the very bottom, Elon Musk said, "Don't say Hess." So it's starting to be a joke. Hess, Herman Hess instead of yes. Don't say Hess to Nazi accusations. And then some people will Goebbels anything down and stop glorying your enemies. Okay, he's using the names of horrific Nazi, violent, murderous Nazis who killed 6 million of my ancestors or sisters and brothers in the Holocaust. It's not funny. So finally, Jonathan Greenblatt, who is president of the ADL, said above this, "We've said it hundreds of times before, and we will say it again. The Holocaust was a singularly evil event, and it is inappropriate and offensive to make light of it. Elon Musk, the Holocaust is not a joke." Okay? Yesterday. And what did Jen Rubin have to say? We adore Jen Rubin. You know her, Nerd Avenger, as well as founder of The Contrarian. She said, "Sucking up to neo-Nazis never works. They just make you look like an enabler, and they do it again. Okay. Now, I want to add this. It's really disgusting. So there are people saying, "Oh, Elon Musk, he cares about Jewish people. He understands the Holocaust." And someone took him apparently on a tour of a concentration camp. But we're finding out now. He went to Auschwitz, which is one of the most brutal concentration camps where people were murdered, gassed to death in showers, worked to death, got diseases. Okay, I want you to know this. Julia Gray, wife of Holocaust survivor Gideon Lev, who joined Musk in his visit to Auschwitz, speaks out. She said that Musk felt nothing during the tour and only cared about how he looked. She didn't talk about this publicly until now, and I guess this is a post. It looks like it's a post on Facebook. And I'm not going to read you the whole thing, but I will say the beginning, what Julia Gray said. I see people posting that Elon was at Auschwitz this time last year. Therefore, his recent gesture is not anti-Semitic. Julie Gray goes on, I was there too, last year with Elon. I'm embarrassed that I have photos of this on my phone. My love, Gideon Lev, was the special guest of this photo op event. We thought at the time that it would be good publicity, but I would not share the photo today. I chatted with Elon Musk. I spent hours with him and walked with him through Auschwitz. I stood with him, looking at the nauseating heaps of hair, luggage, and shoes flooded with violet light meant to preserve it. Is Musk an anti-Semite? People actually, it's worse. He doesn't care whatsoever. Elon, father of little x, as he described his freezing cold son to me, literally does not care. He was unmoved by the experience. Okay. He was utterly detached. He cared about how he looked. When he placed a wreath at Auschwitz and Gideon was overlooked, he walked away with the cameras whirring. He didn't acknowledge this Holocaust survivor. This is Elon Musk, a sociopath, if ever there was one. To deduce from the visit that he is a friend of the Jews is desperately naive. Okay, that is hard to take, but that's what we know. Now, friends, before we get to Crazy Town and our person of the day, can we talk about the price of eggs? Because here we go. You know that Justin Wolfers, economist, economics professor from University of Michigan, shows us the price of eggs beginning in, 2013. And do you see the numbers going up? Okay, the folks obsessively posting about egg prices for the past few years have gone strangely quiet, just as egg prices hit an all-time high. Now, I don't need you to tell me that it's partially because of the bird flu, because it was partially because of the bird flu before. And by the way, Donald Trump doesn't want us to know about the bird flu. There are lots of factors, but they are spiking. So now it is time for, it's the same one we had before. It's getting messy, but this is our whiteboard. And so I want to show you. Donald Trump said grocery was his favorite word. What is happening with grocery? The prices are going up. Immigrants? Yes. He promised he would try to get rid of them. And thank God, so far, he's only done a raid violating the constitutional rights of U.S. citizens and making people angry, and also attempting to not let people who are immigrants have the benefit for their children of birthright citizenship. So he's failing on that ground. What about cutting taxes on billionaires and corporations? He keeps promising to do that. hasn't succeeded. Oh, in terms of our taxes here, remember how he promised to immediately end taxes on tipped labor? Has not happened. Okay. As for January 6th, did he promise to pardon everyone? He did. So look at that. He pardoned or gave commutations to people who committed violence for him in the past, sending a message, not just thank you very much, but also sending a message that if you kill or harm or create violence in the future for me, I will pardon you. If he's still in the White House at the time the pardon would be issued, or still living, which he is planning to be both. What about going after his enemies? Well, he's trying to do that with this January 6th hearing and by taking away security clearance from people he perceives as his enemies. But he might be falling into a trap, as we see with the Hutchinson situation. How about ending wars? Well, the war in Ukraine is not over. He said it would be done immediately. What about the war in Gaza? Well, he sort of said it's their war. It's not mine. Okay, that's great. And what about years ago? He said 100% of ISIS was gone. That is not true. So he is not actually doing that great. Okay, let us move on now to my person of the day, and then we will do Crazy Town. My person of the day is Chris Hayes, because there is something, I am trying not to watch a lot of news. That's why I didn't know how to pronounce the judge's name. But what I will tell you is I am really enjoying, and I do think Rachel's doing a good job, but I want to say, if I had to choose one person to watch now, it is Chris Hayes, because he is bringing the facts. He is straight with the information. And I like the guests that he has on. I think he really can engage with them and bring out information that we might not otherwise get. And so what I want to share with you now is something Chris Hayes is alarmed by, which I am too, which is that Donald Trump is cutting cancer research. And again, I would have expected this, but maybe not so quickly. And by cutting things like cancer research, and by also reversing the executive order that was holding down the cost of prescription drugs for people on Medicare, he is harming all of us, because all of us will, if we are lucky enough to live long enough, have Medicare. And all of us, huge numbers of us, will wind up with cancer because we just live longer. And the cancer research has come up with these targeted treatments that are so much less harsh for many types of cancer that people can live out their lives. People can have a much greater chance of surviving 5 or 10 or 20 years. And this is what we want for our families and for ourselves. So let me play for you, Chris, a clip from Chris Hayes, my person of the day.
Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. As of today, it looks as though Donald Trump is in the process of freezing federally funded cancer research in the United States. You got that? Cancer research. Why? Well, to be totally honest, we're not sure. But on his orders, the National Institutes of Health has frozen everything. Cancer research, Alzheimer's, diabetes. There's a lot not to like about the American healthcare system, but health research is one of the things that we do really, really well here in this country. We spend a lot of money on it for good reason. The NIH has a $48 billion budget, which funds 50,000 grants to 300,000 researchers across 2,500 research institutions nationwide, all over the place, studying all kinds of things.
Did you notice something? He gave us the information. 300,000 researchers, right? This is public universities. This is all kinds of public health concerns, the things that you're deliberately studying and the things that you stumble upon because you notice something. You know what else you noticed about that? You didn't see President Scribble face. Thank you, Chris Hayes. I really don't want to see him. And that is why I find when I watch Chris Hayes, I don't see Donald Trump's visage, and I often don't hear his voice. And that is something else. Now, guys, this is the craziest effing crazy town. Guys, this is crazy. Remember Congressman Burchett the other day, who was being confronted by Jim Acosta? I believe he was the congressman from Tennessee who was denying the violence at the Capitol. Well, Burchett now says that he believes aliens have underwater bases on Earth. Aliens have underwater bases on Earth. I don't know if this is a matter of ignorance or psychosis. Why not both? Anyway, have a great weekend, guys, and I will see you on Monday. Oh, really exciting. Tuesday morning, my guest at 9 a.m. is going to be none other than Randy Weingarten. Yes, the president of the American Federation of Teachers. It's not every day when a little teacher like me, a member of her union, can get her to come to our show. I am thrilled. I'm really enjoying, you guys, a mixture of commentary and law and snark and our guests. So let me know in the chat who you want to hear from, and I will do my level best to bring them on the show. Have a great weekend.